trade with them.
And yet they have hit the United States when Rudy Giuliani says, we are at war, we must track them down and crush them. What's going on there? Do you think he's just not thinking or just thinking differently from you?
Well, I think he's demagoguing the issue for political purposes, and also it served his purpose on the speaking tours to talk like that and capitalize on his position when he was mayor. But to do that, there's a lot of terrorism in Sri Lanka. I mean, is he going to go after the terrorists there? I mean, it doesn't mean anything. You know, when people declare war, they do it for a purpose, and if it's accidental that the war started, they use it as an advantage. Whether it's a war in Iraq, war against terrorism, or war against drugs, this is always used to intimidate the people, frighten the people, and get the people to sacrifice their liberties. Because too many Americans have drifted to the point where, well, at least they're making me safe. We want a Giuliani because he's tough and he's going to make me safe. So what do? They permit warrantless searches. They allow national ID card to come into effect. They give up habeas corpus. They endorse military commissions and get out of the regular court system. They go along with torture, and they endorse the idea of preemptive war just so the terrorists might not ever come because we might be attacked. We are literally giving up everything that we have earned through our revolution and what the founders gave us in our Constitution. So, quite frankly, I think there's very little left in protecting us for our civil liberties in this country because of individuals like Giuliani who will demagogue and use this issue to promote their programs and their authoritarian approach to solving all our problems.
Hello, Rudy. There's Congressman Ron Paul. Let's go to Bob in Aiken, South Carolina. Bob, you're on the air.
Yes, hello, Tom and Dr. Paul. Finally, a presidential candidate who makes some sense and seems to be more interested in the welfare of the country as opposed to advancing their own interests.
Bob, do you say that as a Republican, as a Democrat, as a Libertarian, an Independent, what?
I used to be a Republican, and now I think we have a one-party system with two branches. And I think that's indicated by what's being done to Dr. Paul out in Iowa.
What do you say? What's your question for Congressman Paul?
Well, first of all, let me just say it's rare that I have the opportunity to talk with an American hero, and that's what I'm doing right now. I also apologize for the uninformed Republican dog pack that greeted him in South Carolina and was cheering Giuliani's vacuous patriotism. My question is, for whom, actually two, if I may, for whom in the Congress, Dr. Paul, do you feel an affinity? That is, any fellow travelers? Frankly, I find none, which is very depressing. And secondly, what will it take to get some focus and conversation going on the disastrous economic policies of this government? Is it going to take a complete collapse?
Ron Paul. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, very, very good. In some ways, I feel no affinity with one particular individual who really looks at the world and the economy and foreign policy as I do. But that
How about Dennis Kucinich? He's the Democrat
but that
who wants...
said, almost everybody I feel an affinity to. You take a Dennis Kucinich, very close affinity. Yesterday, he and I were the only ones that voted no on a resolution which we both interpreted as just being war propaganda, getting the country ready to go to war against Iran, just like they were doing before Iraq.
But he must be far from you on economics, Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, and there were 11 or so that voted present, and they were annoyed too, and there were a bunch who were annoyed, but they could not come to voting something that AIPAC sent out the message, you better vote for this or you're going to be on our list as being unfriendly. So that's how strongly, even the very, very strong anti-war, anti-Iraq war people in Congress could not do it because of that type of pressure. So yes, Dennis and I do very well on national sovereignty issues and on foreign policy, but we're very polite in our discussions about, the economy and economics because even though I'm a free market person and I really don't endorse in principle the welfare state because I see that as using the same force that is used to try to make people better and make the world better, and I don't think the federal government should use that. But that said, I am also very open to the idea of priorities, which you have to, and you have to live in a practical world. So if people are dependent on the government, has taught to be dependent, if they're elderly or the poor, and they are, their budgets are being jeopardized right now. That's where they're trying to cut. At the same time, they won't touch an embassy in Iraq for $1 billion and 14 military bases in Iraq, which is going to undermine our whole system of defense, and it's going to cost a lot of money. It makes us less safe. So I'm willing to cut a lot of that and really work on a transition program to help people who have become so dependent. And that, to me, is the only way we can solve some of these